Depp's in this. It's kind of one of those things where I used to love certain actors, and then after a while, you just kind of go, well, you know, Johnny Depp, what happened, man? Why all the makeup all the time? It was refreshing to see him out of makeup in Murder on the Orient Express. By the way, the sequel for that is in the works too. The next one, the Death of the Nile.
I still haven't seen that Murder. You're talking about the Kenneth Branagh film that came out last. I actually I didn't get a chance to see that.
Come over and watch it sometime. Okay. It's good. It's worth watching. It's a solid adaptation of the novel. It takes a few liberties, but all the film adaptations and television adaptations take a few liberties. But he is probably the only Hercule Poirot who has what is described by Agatha Christie in the books as the best mustache in all of Europe. He has this. It's beyond a hipster mustache. It is so cool that no hipster could pull it off with their post-ironic mustache thing. It is just so amazingly cool because it's like a multi-layered mustache. It feels like an older Hollywood movie. There are some flashier camera moments, but for the most part, it really does feel like a film that could have come out 20 years ago. Like, it's got the visual style that I think is lacking in a lot of movies, a lot of big budget, because it's a big budget movie. It's got a huge cast of a lot of potential Oscar winners and Oscar nominees, and it really, really good. And I'm looking forward to if the next film which is another adaptation of another Poirot novel, is as good as this, I'll keep looking forward to it. You know, but Johnny Depp's performance in it was actually really good. I mean, he's in a small portion of the film, which isn't really a spoiler if you've seen the trailer. They give that away, but he didn't have to wear the funny makeup. And I know he's wearing the makeup in the next Fantastic Beasts, but again, he's a supporting player in that, and he'll probably be really good. But
almost as good as Tonto.
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe in 2013 we still had a white dude playing Native American. That really, and there's so many good Native American actors who could have played the role. And yeah, so I used to be excited about Johnny Depp, but now it's kind of more like. Not so much when he's in the lead anymore. I feel like he played Hunter S. Thompson and he couldn't get out of that role. He did it well.
I loved him as Hunter S. Thompson. I loved him as
brilliant. I bought the
I'm so glad
DVD.
You like that. So many people hate that movie. I loved that movie.
It's definitely not for everybody.
It's
definitely not for everybody. But I've had Fear and Loathing experiences in Vegas. And when I first read the novel by Hunter S. Thompson, along with Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, and I saw Bill Murray do a pretty decent version of him in the movie Where the Buffalo Roam.
I did see
that.
Not
a great
too,
movie. Yeah. It meanders a lot. Doesn't really have a core story, but it's a bunch of short Hunter S. Thompson stories kind of compiled. Bill Murray did a good job, but Johnny Depp nailed it. I thought I was watching Hunter S. Thompson, and to me, that is probably the last truly, truly great Johnny Depp.
You think so?
Movie. As far as him in the lead, absolutely. I mean, he's done some decent movies, but
Dead Man.
Dead Man is great, but that was even before it. That was in 95. That just got a Criterion release that I'm going to have to pick up. I love that movie. Not again a Western that's not for everybody because Jim Jarmusch is not for everybody. But and I like the Pirates movies. I like all the Pirates movies for what they are. It's good Saturday afternoon. I've got nothing else to do. Filler. Let's throw on that. They're good adventures. They're not great. They're not high art.
I always thought that they were so overrated. I didn't understand. I found myself in the middle of this thing, and it was like what? I think I was like just reading through something in City Weekly or something. It's like you're Pirates 3 or Pirates 4, and I'm just like, what is this thing? I mean, I get it. People like pirates, but I think I only saw the first one, and I thought that was overrated. I wasn't a fan of any of them. I just didn't get it. I didn't get why people were so fascinated, just so into pirates.
I think the reason why the first one succeeded and why I enjoyed it is because we hadn't seen a swashbuckling pirate adventure in decades. I think
the last one was the Muppets pirate show. Or
that was one.
Just kidding.
Cutthroat Island was another. And Cutthroat Island, while not a great movie, is vastly underrated for being an entertaining film. It was a box office flop because the movie was more expensive than it should have been, and they weren't going to make their money back. And so we hadn't seen a really good pirate swashbuckling movie, really, probably since like Captain Blood with Errol Flynn. Like, I think the heyday of the pirate movies kind of died out in the 50s because, like, Roman Polanski's not Frantic, but Pirates is not very good. But I thought Ender's Game was a good movie, and it was good to see Harrison Ford in it because that was before they'd even announced the new Star Wars movie. So it was like, wow, Harrison Ford hadn't done a sci-fi movie in a while.
Long time.
Well, he had done Cowboys and Aliens as well, which another underrated movie. It's not the graphic novel that it's based on, but
people
it's fun.
hated that thing. I thought
I
I was
it.
fine with it, but dude, so many people hated that thing, and they just basically said it was like the worst thing ever.
Box office.
I mean, and I think that's a cool. I mean, that's a kind of a cool concept. Like, I guess they just couldn't grab the idea, you know, Cowboys and Aliens. Like, they just couldn't get into it.
It's probably a concept that for most people works better in a novel or the graphic novel, which it was based on. It wasn't an ongoing comic book series; it was a graphic novel, but. Being a fan of spaghetti westerns and being a fan of sci-fi invasion movies and adventure films, combining those was like exciting for me. It is an odd balance too, because on the one hand, it has a lot of the western tropes. It's very much a western, but then it descends completely into sci-fi in the third act with the explosions and the aliens. That to me was awesome. I like hybrid movies like that if they're done well, like Buckaroo Banzai.
Buckaroo, President's on line 1 calling about is everything okay with the alien spacecraft from Planet 10, or should he just go ahead and destroy Russia?
Tell him yes on 1 and no on 2.
You can't get any more hybrid than that. It's science fiction, it's martial arts, it's action adventure, it's romance, it's got everything. Plus it had Clancy Brown in it, and I love Clancy Brown. It'd be hard to decide what I would have him sign. Picture of Lex Luthor from Justice League, the Kurgan from Highlander, Brother Justin from Carnival. Like, what do you have this Starship Troopers? What do you have this man sign? The Bride, the Frankenstein monster from The Bride with Sting and Jennifer Beals. Buckaroo Banzai plays Rawhide. Like, he's so good. He does so many voices. He's the voice of Mr. Krabs in SpongeBob. He's also Shawshank Redemption. Like, he's so good. I don't know. I couldn't decide what to have him sign. So, but yeah, that's my 2 cents.
That's my favorite. I mean, he's been everywhere and we've seen him everywhere. But dude,
Lost?
I'd have to say my favorite is his voice as Lex Luthor in the Justice League because I love that show. I loved that show so much.
I think he is to Lex Luthor what Mark Hamill is to the Joker. They both nailed it. Shaun of the Dead is the most enjoyable zombie movie I've ever seen, and that's an opinion, and it's not wrong, right or wrong. It's my opinion.
What about What's the Zombieland? Did
I
you like
love
Zombieland?
Especially Bill Murray. Bill Murray stole the show. Playing himself, and especially when he's like, after he accidentally shoots him, he's like, do you have any regrets? And he's like, Garfield, maybe? And that was like one of like 30 different takes on every time he would say something different.
Oh, really?
Because on the DVD, it's got the deleted scenes, and there's one where he's is there anything you regret? He's like, yeah, giving you a gun. You know, I mean, but the Garfield thing works perfectly because he's making fun of himself because the only reason he did Garfield is because Bill Murray doesn't have an agent anymore. He's got a voicemail, and people call and pitch something to him. If he likes it, he'll get back to you. And he thought that the screenplay by Joel Cohen was Joel Cohen of the Coen brothers, and he said, I've always wanted to work with the Coen brothers. And the funny thing here is he said this publicly many times after that movie came out, and the Coen brothers still haven't put him in a movie. So please, Coen brothers, pluck the major talent that is Bill Murray and put him in a movie. But that's the only reason why he did the Garfield movies. He thought it was written by one of the Coen brothers.
That is actually hilarious. I didn't even know that. Well, doesn't Bill Murray now, like, doesn't he do, like, your friends won't believe you?
And they were filming, some people were taking a photo, like weddings for their photos for their wedding invites. And he just kind of crashed it, but not in an intrusive way. He waited till they got some of their major photos. That's the one. He got some of their major photos out of the way, and then he said, hey, can I be in this photo with you? And they were so happy. But he says the reason why he does this to people is he finds people that he finds interesting and that what they're doing is... like he saw that couple and he didn't just automatically think, hey, they're getting engaged, I'm going to go and jump in. He thought, those two people that look like they're in love, like really in love. I want to be a part of that. I want to share that. I love how he does things like that. He's gone to college parties and stayed after the party to help clean the house. Like he's that kind of a guy. He's gone to bars and wound up bartending. You know, there's also a story he told about taking a taxi ride, and he was talking to the taxi driver, and he found out the guy's a musician. And the guy mentioned that he had his guitar in the trunk, and he said, well, pull over. I'm going to drive, and you play your guitar. And so the guy sat in the back playing his guitar while Bill Murray drove him around for like 10 or 15 blocks.
He had a Christmas special on Netflix a couple of years ago. That was
Sophia
awesome.
Coppola directed that.
That was pretty. I mean,
Phoenix
I thought it was awesome. Like Chris Rock's in there.
Bill Murray Christmas.
Yeah, that was
very Murray Christmas.
Yeah, and he's great. I love it. He sung a few songs in there. He had several other. It was basically a music. It was a musical show.
Yeah, it had Maya Rudolph from SNL and Idiocracy and Up All Night. I love Maya Rudolph.
That was great.
It had the band Phoenix, and you know why Phoenix was in there?
I don't know.
They played the guys that were working at the restaurant when the power goes out.
Yeah, I remember that.
So the Christmas song they played was an unrecorded, unpublished Brian Wilson song. It was supposed to be a Beach Boys pop song, or maybe it was recorded as like a B-side or on one of their Christmas albums, but it's very obscure. So they covered that. But the reason why is because Sophia Coppola directed them. And that's Francis Ford Coppola's daughter. She did The Virgin Suicides, Lost in Translation with Bill Murray, Marie Antoinette, The Bling Ring. But she's married to the lead vocalist of Phoenix. I loved it. Even when George Clooney shows up for no reason other than George Clooney showing up. And even though that walking trash bag Miley Cyrus was in it, it was still entertaining to me.
Trash bag.
Sorry, I feel like Rich Hall when it comes to her. There's no redeeming qualities for me. That's, yeah.
So anyway, do you want to get into the terror?
Yeah, let's talk some terror.
Talk
some terror. So the season of the terror it finally ended on AMC a few weeks back. It was a 10-episode limited run based on a novel that was published in 2005. Produced by Ridley Scott, Ciarán Hinds, and Jared Harris are the two of the leads. We've already discussed the first episode a few months back. If you saw it, and we know that you did, because you love us.
No, you didn't. Don't lie. You didn't see it.
Oh, come on! You said you were gonna see it. This is basically our cap of the sort of series in a whole, right?
Just basically, talked about the pilot and how kind of creepy it made us feel and cold it made us feel.
This story, it takes place in the 1840s through the 1850s. It does cover like a 4 or 5 year span, and it's loosely based on true events about the HMS Terror and the HMS Erebus, two ships in the Royal Navy that were trying to find the Northwest Passage to India and China by going through the Antarctic. And this really happened. These two ships disappeared. None of the bodies were ever recovered. The ships have since, in the last 5 years, both ships have been found. But this posits what might have happened based on a lot of theories and speculation and what we know at the Antarctic at the time. But basically, these guys get stranded. They're frozen in their boats. And a sort of madness ensues, and a monster, and just a really good, well-paced psychological thriller. It's slow-moving. It's not a fast-moving show. Quite the opposite of something like Ash vs. Evil Dead, and that works in their favor. The tension that mounts is just so good.
Yeah, and if you hadn't told me that, that when you first introduced me to this show, if you hadn't told me that Ridley Scott was involved, I would have figured it out. The cinematography is extraordinary in this show. These huge, wide panoramic shots of the landscape, and the artistry that's involved there. You've got these rock formations where they're leaving these notes for explorers to take onto. That's the huge thing that stood out, of course. But with the score, the music was extraordinary too.
Very unusual score. His score, it's very eerie. It's not a traditional score. There are moments of orchestral, but a lot of the times it's kind of weird, synthesized atmospherics.
Well, he's using a plug-in. The music industry we call it plug-in. It's a plug-in that you use that it's actually, well, at least one of them, at least the theme song and some of the other themes that you hear the melody. It's a plucking of the piano string of someone hitting it, and that's why you get this kind of, and so they're literally hitting it like playing it like a dulcimer, like you would like a dulcimer. So they're playing it. So they're playing. I mean, but that's what it sounds like. It's just you're plucking the actual
which kind of
piano
gives
string.
it that kind of an authentic feel of maybe a sound of the era. But it also, again, he does incorporate some weird electronic
that too,
some ambient soundscapes in it, which gives it a sort of heightened tension. It's not one of those overly artsy juxtapose where it's playing happy music to demented scenes or anything. It's quite fitting. The cinematography, I agree with you. The cinematography was really well done.
It's Marcus Fellstrom, I believe it's Fellstrom.
Yeah.
That's how you pronounce it. So, and yeah, it's really, really cool, very modern.
Yeah.
And not out of place or anything.
Yeah,
but not like it's out of place or anything, but gives that general, for lack of a better term, like you said, atmospheric, but also supernatural. It makes you feel like you're in this entire supernatural. This snow-filled landscape is very supernatural.
And I guess at the time, I mean, I guess it still is because most of it's uninhabitable. It has to feel kind of alien to society, which they really play on, because that's a part of the isolation that these men go through over the couple of winters and summers that they're stranded, in the cold. The sort of isolated desperation of just constantly being surrounded by the Arctic. And I have to agree with you on the cinematography. What I liked about the cinematography in this is that they really did strive to go for a cinematic feel, not a flashy feel. There are a little bit of handheld shots, but most of them are Steadicam shots or tracking shots, stalling shots, very old school kind of Hollywood. It really, I think if they had done it in a modern approach with a lot of flash and things, it would have underscored the tension.
Yeah, definitely. I just found out that Fellstrom he did some music to Salad Fingers. Have you ever seen this? Anyway,
No.
it's kind of a demented, extremely demented, two-dimensional animation that my brother introduced to me a few years ago. And it's pretty gross and demented and crazy. But anyway,
Which brother?
Pete.
Oh, okay.
So
How you doing, Peter? Haven't seen you in a while. Yeah.
So, but apparently, Fellstrom, the composer, did music for that show.
Okay.
So, which is just kind of it's just actually pretty funny.
And check those out on the YouTube. Salad.
You
Fingers.
might, I think you'll definitely appreciate it. It's pretty gross and demented, and actually kind of hilarious at the same time.
Good.
Kind of like Ren and Stimpy on PCP and acid, maybe. I don't know.
There you go. Another thing that I was really that sucked me into the world of the terror is, again, the pace and the leisurely pace it takes to tell the story as the tension mounts and the events culminate, and also a lot of the realism that they took. Even though most of this was filmed on a set, they took a lot of painstaking elements to really create the Arctic and to create what would happen to you in the Arctic, like for instance, hands sticking to metal, that exposed skin.
Yes.
And the costuming, and the hair and everything. It doesn't matter that I could tell some of the actors had wigs on because they probably cut their hair before they got the role, because it just worked. The costuming, I really felt like I was in that era.
One of the biggest things that always got me and creeped me out, because I was watching this by myself, is the projection of realism in that when they're walking around the ship and there are a million scenes of different parts of ships in this, and you hear, because what's happening, you got Mother Nature fighting against you. The ice is wanting to grow into the ship and take it over, basically, just and so constantly you hear the ice or the water or whatever pushing up against it, and you hear the and it's constant. It's
and
something
the cracking of the ice.
Yeah, that too, definitely.
Yeah. So it creates a tension, and again with the music and the kind of the strings and the sort of low intensity, because it was never really jarring music. It's very low intense. It creates an atmosphere it's tense and frightening, even when it's not being tense and frightening, because you feel the claustrophobia and the madness that's about to ensue, which is what happens when you have people that are isolated like this for so long. And in a lot of ways, when they said in the production of this, they were definitely influenced by John Carpenter's The Thing and by Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. And I absolutely see that. And in fact, I feel like in a lot of ways, this is sort of in that same genre of horror. It's
Yeah.
not a direct horror story, but it has those elements. I mean, there is a giant monster in it. I mean, if you haven't seen it, all 10 episodes should be done. They're probably on Amazon Prime by now, or possibly Hulu, and I definitely think it's worth watching.
The story takes you in directions I did not think that
Yeah.
it would ever go. That
Yeah.
I didn't. It's like by the time you're on episode 7, you're like, what is going on? And I don't know if we should, probably not. Don't want to get into spoilers, but
Not too
honestly,
much.
some of these these protagonists, turn out to be antagonists and turn
Yeah.
out to be someone completely different than what you think. Some of these people become, you find out later who they really are. You find out how they got there. What they are. There's a lot of espionage going on, and it's crazy too. It's like you would think that, given this situation where everybody's just trying to stay alive, that's the object, is to survive, and that's what you hear, that just to survive. You hear that so many times. Oh, they're a survivor, blah blah blah. And in that situation, you think, oh yeah, no one's gonna try to, off each other, because it's just about trying to survive, right? And it's apparently not.
Takes some sharp turns.
Yeah, it
takes some
does.
really dark, sharp turns. I don't know if you got this, but this is the way I felt when it was over. Personally, I felt that the ending was extremely satisfactory. It is different than the book that it's based on. They had to obviously make certain liberties for dramatic storytelling, but it follows it fairly closely. At least the events, even if they're out of order, still happen. It's kind of like the difference between the Walking Dead comic book and the TV show. Similar but different. But I was extremely satisfied with the ending. And also, it's only 10 episodes. And I don't know if you felt this way too, but I felt like I felt like, even though it was only 10 episodes, like once it was done, I felt like I'd been watching it for months. Like they really covered a lot of ground and a lot of story in such a short time. Like the characters really grow and change. And as you said, some characters you don't think that this is the way they're going to be, and then you find out that some of them, their true colors have been this way really the whole time, and they've been hiding it. And it just, wow, it just took me in directions I didn't think it was going to go in. I couldn't even predict it. So at the end of it, I felt like I had just sat through this huge, long story. And it's only 10 episodes. And very rarely does that happen in a series.
Yeah, definitely. My favorite, of course, Jared Harris.
Yeah.
He being in, seeing him in Mad Men. That was the first time I've seen him. Of course, he's been in a lot of stuff since and before. Of course, he's a well-accomplished actor.
Fringe.
But
Fringe.
that is a show that I did not, unfortunately did not end up seeing. However, I did love him in Mad Men, and seeing him in this show, you do want him to survive. You want him to be okay. You want him to take care of his shipmates. You want him to accomplish the goals that he's going for. You want him to he's one of the captains. You want him to be okay.
But he's the captain I would follow. He's the captain that I would thought was the most captain.
The most captain.
The most captain. Is that even a phrase? I just said it.
It is
so
now.
Deal with it.
It is now.
I think that he brings such authority to the role, but also such respect and admiration for the men that he works with.
Yeah.
And he sees himself quite differently than the captain that Ciaran Hind plays.
Right.
He feels like he's a just and righteous captain by God, and where Jared Harris is a little bit more grounded. And by the way, I will say this about Jared Harris too. I thought his Moriarty in Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows was really good. He's just a terrific actor in everything I've seen. Even the not so good 1998 Lost in Space movie, he even when he popped up on screen, I was like, well, he's a good actor, and he puts all in every role he plays, and I really enjoy him. I liked him in Man from U.N.C.L.E. as well. Very underrated.
I forgot that he was in Man. I loved Man from U.N.C.L.E. I forgot that he was
in that, which is pretty good.
I forgot that he was in that. He was great in that.
And so the cast in this is really, really impeccable. But the guy that gets on my nerves, I think you know who that is. Trying to think of what his name was.
The one.
No, I actually didn't mind he becomes a captain, but he's not really. James Fitzjames, yeah, that character.
Well, he was great, because you find out what his, at the very end, towards the very end, James Fitzjames, he turns out that he's like, oh, I'm a kind of a bastard type of thing. He's got this origin that's I mean, his dad is, I guess, English, but his mother was Puerto Rican or someone, and so at that time that was like a look down thing.
Exactly.
And so he was kind of ashamed. He was full of shame, but he was so loyal, and he was just like the second that Francis Crozier says, you're like a son. You're like a son to me. He's just he lights up.
Yeah.
It's a great moment. It's a great moment to see how loyal he is and how he's like, could you be a father to me? He's just so it was wonderful.
That bonding moment towards
tons of
I
that.
think it was the third to last episode 7. That bonding moment between the two, between James Fitzjames and Captain Crozier. That really got me.
It was great.
Because they'd been kind of antagonistic towards each other throughout the majority of the series, but now they have a mutual respect. And then Captain Crozier tells him he's always respected him. And I thought that was great. That's what you want to see. Because when some of these characters reveal their real intentions, oh man, they really are kind of like, I'm trying to find the character, why I can't remember his name, Mr.
Are you talking about the other captain that was basically
the one
just a
who
jerk?
ends up essentially becoming the sort of the main villain of the series?
Hickey.
Oh man, I could not wait to see that guy get his.
That was he was the most surprising outcome. I had no idea that he would end up where he was, being the. So, do you want to get into a spoiler? I mean, I did. I mean, maybe we should wait.
Spoilers,
I mean, there was just like the cutting of the tongues out.
Oh yeah.
So that, did you get that? I did not get that. That's one thing I did not get. So it's like they were cutting their tongues out to give to the beast?
Well, and it's different from the book. In the book, so there is a bit of a spoiler I'm going to give away here. In the book, the creature that's stalking them is sort of an Inuit mythological monster, not a real one, but made up for this book and show. It feasts on souls. When it kills people, it takes their souls. And from what I gathered, what Lady Silence and her father did is sort of a sacrifice to the creature, is to cut out their tongue. And I forget what the exact significance of it is, but Hickey tries to do that. He realizes that, and he tries to do it, but his soul is so... What I gathered, because in the book, the creature won't eat him because his soul is so poisoned. And what's interesting about this character, Hickey, is that on first viewing, you're surprised by how he turns out. But in rewatching it, because I did watch this series again, this time in a binge format, so I was able to get through it in 2 or 3 days. You actually see right from the beginning that he is just working his angles the entire time. He's just a manipulative, corrupted person.
Bastard.
And that's why, exactly, and that's why the creature won't take his tongue, is because he's not worthy. His soul is so poisoned that, in a literal sense, it kills the monster, but also because of what the doctor did. And again, not to give away too many spoilers, but there's cannibalism involved.
There's so much of it, it's crazy.
It gets brutal. I mean, this does not hold back on the violence. It's not gratuitous in the violence. There isn't gory violence in every episode, but when it happens, it's like a Tarantino movie. You're just going along for the ride, and then you're like, whoa, that was intense and cool. And I love it when shows can do that, because I feel like violence can be overused sometimes. Do you know what I mean? It can be a little bit gratuitous just for the sake of violence, or they can do that with anything, nudity, language, whatnot. And as I'm getting older, I find that sometimes that doesn't always work in a story. It has to be a legitimate, logical part of the story. And they do that in The Terror. They do that in The Expanse. There are moments of just wildly graphic violence that are out of nowhere, but it makes sense. It's not just for the shock factor, because if you just wanted the shock factor, you could just watch an American Horror Story, and that's all that is shock factor. No logical storytelling whatsoever, just shock twist. And I'm so glad that this took a different approach. It took a more cinematic and a more serious approach to its storytelling. It could have easily descended into something like that, and it doesn't. But the actor who played Cornelius Hickey, what's his name? Adam Negatus?
He was fantastic.
He was.
He steals the camera. He really does.
Yeah.
He pulls you in, and you cannot stop watching this guy. Like, he's a very charismatic villain.
Yeah. And that's what I liked about him, is he is almost of the mustache twirling variety, but he's not so flamboyant or over the top. He does ground it. And as much as you start to hate that character, unless you're sympathetic to him, and that's another thing, you could possibly be sympathetic towards some of these characters that are doing these terrible things. But I found him to be so repugnant as a human being, but I couldn't take my eyes off watching him.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
Where's he going to go next? What's he going to do next?
Well, it's because he literally is. It's his charisma. It's like it's inviting the camera in, and he pulls you in, and it's not just the way he looks, etc. It's the way he's able to project this character into you. It's almost intoxicating in a way, but in not so much in a sense of just like you said, you just can't stop watching. It's crazy. And
I have to say that a program like this makes me very excited because it's refreshing, because it's not going to be an ongoing series. It's a true limited series. It's a refreshing detour. If you just need to want to watch something that's different and atmospheric but cinematic at the same time, it's engrossing, it's compelling, it'll drag you in with good performances, good production value, good cinematography, good music, all around good. This is a show that I'm going to highly recommend. I will buy it when it comes out in the physical media. I'll pick up the Blu-rays or the 4Ks or whatever, because it's something that I feel like every couple of years I could go back and get immersed in for a weekend or a week or what have you.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So good.
And I think it was underrated.
What an it was underrated, you say?
Well, I think critically it did
it wasn't
well,
as it really.
But I don't think it's something that it definitely didn't get other AMC show ratings. It didn't get Walking Dead or Mad Men or Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul ratings, but I believe that it has a pretty good critical rating. I think the consensus is that, in fact, I believe it's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but it's definitely not something that AMC was overhyping. You know what I mean? It
deserves awards. It deserves an Emmy.
Yeah.
And it's a shame if it doesn't get at least nominated for an Emmy somewhere. Maybe Jared Harris is acting. He was extraordinary in it. I mean, the story was incredible. Mm-hmm. All the story points, where they go, where they end up. It's like almost nothing to me personally. Nothing in this was predictable at all.
And were you not satisfied by the end? Did you not go?
Yes,
I was. Going, this is good.
And I was extremely satisfied at the end. That was actually the first time I've seen an ending of anything in a long time and been that satisfied. Yeah,
exactly. So again, I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it, and you trust me, and you trust us and our opinion, I'm going to give it a 4-star out of 4-star rating. It's definitely worth watching, and then it's probably worth coming back to at some point, because I think the second time around I gathered even more nuances that I hadn't seen the first time around, and it's like that. It's like a good book that you can go back to. And that's kind of a rarity in a lot of television. We're kind of bombarded with so much that's built on hype and on franchises and on shocking and shock value and things. And to have just a solid story that makes no bones about what kind of story it is, but that can drag you in, where you really care about the characters and you want to get back and immersed into that world. Because I don't know about you, but I look forward to every week. Like, oh man, it's Monday night. I'm going to watch The Terror. This is a good show to get back into. So for me, it was a richly rewarding cinematic television experience, which is kind of weird. Cinematic television. Well, okay, it's not a 50-foot screen, but hey, a 52-inch widescreen is pretty good.
I would agree with you, Joe, on that. I agree with you. I would definitely give it a 4 out of 4 if we're doing out of 4 to 4. If we're doing out of 4. It's 4 out of 4. So that's what it is. And that means that you should watch it if you get a chance.
Yep.
Check this thing out. And I can't stop talking about how great it is.
Yeah.
Thanks for
watching television.
Thanks for watching.
And as always, we appreciate it, and keep tuning in and like and subscribe.
Yeah, and please subscribe to the Fanatics of Film if you like to see more content like this. Have a splendid day.